thank you for coming out and doing this. I've read your book. It's a great book. It's funny, it's harrowing, it's fantastic. If you had told the teenage version of me that I'd be sitting next to the best dancer on Soul Train, I would have hit you with a bottle of Afro Sheen, because I would not have believed you at all. But here we are. And the first thing that struck me about your book was the title, of course, Handbook for an Unpredictable Life. And we'll get to the subtitle shortly. But the word that stood out for me was handbook, as if you're telling us that you're giving us a guide or just some information on how we too can deal with our unpredictable lives. Can you talk a little bit about the title, or how you chose it?
It's my editor's fault. Is she here? Senior editor at Crown Books. There she is.
You can't hide.
Oh, hi, Don. How are you? The subtitle, actually, George C. Wolfe came up with.
Oh.
In the beginning, I thought it was appropriate because I didn't write it for the sole purpose of, oh, this is my life and I want to tell you everything about it. It was also intended for the students that I mentor in my charity, and it was also intended for other adults who sometimes feel they're alone in their experience. And I just showcase the ups and downs, but also the mistakes and the learning lessons along the way, and hence Handbook.
Yeah. Great. Again, it's a great book. It's very funny. It's you on the page. I opened it and I was reading it. I heard your voice. Your little parentheticals are like little nudges on the sides telling me. And you dedicate the book to 4 people. You dedicate it to your aunt, to your father, to the folks at the home that you were at, and to your mother. And so I wanted to talk just a little bit about each of those, because in your book, they're all very large figures, and they obviously have shaped who you are, and you talk about them in great detail and with great love and affection, and sometimes, as you said, pointing out the...
Are you Puerto Rican?
You get a pass today. Now that I've lost my train of thought completely.
Oh, the evening's early. Go ahead.
So you mention all 4 of those, and they're very large figures in the book, and you talk about their mistakes and also the things that they did that were affected you in a very positive way. And I thought we'd talk about each of them. Let's start with your tia, who until you were 3 took care of you.
Yeah.
And she's a very, very positive and powerful figure in the book. Can you talk about her a little bit?
How can I say this? She was my everything because she validated me. She validated me through her love, her unconditional, undying love. And so many people have asked me, which is really rude, how come you didn't turn out to be a drug addict or a street urchin or a thug? I would say that a big part of the reason why I am who I am is because of that validation. So many young people seek that outside of the home when they don't get it, even if they're fortunate to have a home.
And not always in a positive way either.
Not always in a positive way. And I didn't need that as much as some other kids did because of her. And that's a huge statement in itself. But she taught me giving, because she would give and not expect a thing. Not like literally not expect a thing, and praise nothing. And sometimes, you give and you want someone to pat you on the back whether you know it or not. She never wanted that, ever. It didn't even occur to her. And if you did try to do that, she would go, "Ay, you're so stupid, stop." And you know, my sense of humor is a big part of who she is.
That
My
comes
work
across in the
ethics.
book quite a bit. She's very funny.
Yeah, she's very funny. My work ethics is a big part of her, but I think it's my ability to forgive. Sometimes it's not quick, but it's always there, is because of her too.
I like what she referred to as her American Express. I thought that was a great idea. I won't tell you what it is. You'll have to read the book to find out what the American Express is, but like the card, you don't leave home without it. And I like that she was always, you're trying to give her money and she would give it back to you and scold you and say, "I don't want this, this is for you." And that was such charity and such, what's the word I want? Auntiness. I mean, I have 8 aunts, so I know what it's like. They're all like that, and I thought she was just she made me cry.
Oh, thank you. Well, I would say with the money thing, I think it's, I don't think it's just an auntie thing. I think it's a parent thing. You know, I used to joke, I'm going to have kids so I can have someone change the channel. And because it's so hard, you might as well get something back out of it, you know. But she never, ever wanted anything back except one thing, and that's toward the end of the book, and I don't want to give it away. You know, and I thought that was so extraordinary. And when your parent does that, when they don't expect anything from you, but they give you everything, you just want to give everything in return.
Absolutely. So, your dad was her brother.
Yes.
And he was a merchant marine.
Yes.
And he was, in your words, he was gorgeous. And you look at the picture, yeah, he was a very handsome man. And he was also a character in your life, and he was almost larger than life in the book. It almost seemed like he took on almost a heroic kind of nature. And he's, in my opinion, outside of your mom, he's kind of the figure that, to me, was fascinating and almost like mythic in a way, and I read about him. So you talk about him a little bit.
Wow, mythic. That's funny because I think he's such the quintessential Puerto Rican man. I remember being so attracted to him even before I knew he was my father. He just had that charisma about him. And even when he was sad, he was happy. I know that sounds weird. Everything was a joke to him. Everything was a joke, and every situation was an opportunity to talk about himself and you know, about his memories of his womanizing days. But he always made me laugh. Even when I would get so angry at this man, he would still make me laugh. And when I go to Puerto Rico, he's passed on, God rest his soul. I remember at the funeral, there was a line of women, and I'm not exaggerating, from the age of 34 to 82. I remember your father, he was my first love. And I'm going, oh my God. You know, me and my sister Carmen were exhausted by like, I know, I understand. And when they would move on, we would crack up. I'm like, oh my God, Dad was no joke. And, you know, but that was his way and his effect on people. And my father used to say something really weird, and I didn't get it, and now I'm compelled to say it. When he would meet you for the first time and he would tell you, I like you very much, I hope you come to my funeral. I'm like, what? His funeral lasted 3 days. That was the wake. The wake lasted 3 days. People were calling the funeral parlor telling the funeral director, if you close it, I swear to God, I'm going to come down and kill you. And just so they could come and pay their respect to the man. And it turned into kind of like a off-Broadway play. You know, everybody wanted to say something about the man, and he was just so fascinating. And I fell in love with him. And I think every girl and boy should fall in love with their parents.
Absolutely.
And I was privileged enough to have that opportunity, although it didn't come right away, you know, it came.
Right. And just because I love you, Mom. So mythic wasn't a bad choice of a word. I mean, his funeral was 3 days, everyone was showing up. It was like Valentino in Puerto Rico.
Yeah, yeah, it was. And, you know, even the procession onto the burial site, it was really funny. A camera crew came, and I turned to my sister and I went, oh my God, I am so not up for the cameras. And the guy goes, don't worry, we're not here for you, we're here for your father. And I went, oh, okay. And they went right past me, you know, yeah, and he was on the local news. And I was just a byline. That's who the man was, and he was so incredible like that.
Oh, that's great. That's great. So the third people that you dedicate your book to are all the kids at the home. So let's talk a little bit about that. You were at St. Joseph's Catholic Home for Children. I made sure I committed that to memory in Peekskill, right? In Peekskill, New York. The time you're about 3 or so, you were there, and that whole section of the book is fascinating. It's scary. It's funny. The people that you meet. Puerto Rican Jew Evita Feinstein. And that's just great. That just alone is just great. Yeah, just imagine her. She conjures up in my head. And Crazy Cindy. And these folks that you talk about with such joy and remembrance. And even with the hard times with Sister Renata, who was in the subtitle here. Can we talk a little bit about that, about being at the home? And you mentioned later on in the book how the nuns, despite your protestations, they give you a really strong work ethic. When you were doing choreography, you talked about you were strict as the nuns and that they instilled that in you, perfection. Can you talk about that, just briefly about your time there and how it affected you as an activist, especially because there's some things in the book that that I would see someone wanting to have activism about, especially the way they treated some of the children and some of the things that you talk about happening outside of the group home and so on. Could you speak to that?
Well, in regards to the activism, I never want anyone to suffer the way I did or the way the kids in the home did. I know how it feels to be left out, left behind, ignored, not given certain opportunities just because you were born into a certain situation that you have absolutely no control over. And even before I was in the entertainment industry, that's just who I was. There was a story that one of the girls that I went to outside school, that's like school that's not the Catholic school, in upstate New York. I saw her as an adult. No, actually, I saw her mother as an adult. She said, "Do you remember me?" I said, "No, I don't." And this is when I was hiding, and I was getting an anxiety attack, and I just wanted the woman to go away. And it was at a dinner party, and she just kept on and on and on. "Weren't you in the..." Okay. And my assholeness started to rise up, and I said, "Who do you sleep with?" And she said, "I beg your pardon." I go, "Exactly, let's move on." And she laughed, and she went, "My daughter said you were like that." And I went, "Excuse me?" And she said, "There was a school bus driver that every day," she said, he would drive erratically. And you would go up to him and say, "You're drunk, you're drunk." And you were only I think she said I was 10 years old. And he would tell me to sit down, and I refused to sit down. And one day he was swerving to the point where I thought we were all going to get in the accident. And all the kids were screaming and crying on the bus. And she told me that I turned around and told all the kids, calm down, relax. And I told the man, you better pull over right now or I'm going to punch you in the face. I said that? And then I remembered I did. That's so embarrassing. And I said, I'm going to report you to the police and the school board at 10. And I told all the kids to move forward because he wouldn't stop the bus. And he finally stopped the bus. And I opened the door, and I made all the kids get out. And I said, now we're going to wait here. And I was instructing, I go, you go to your house and call your parent and make them call the school. And they brought another bus and took us to school. So it was always there. And that comes directly from Sister Renata. I couldn't stand how she would beat me. I couldn't stand how she would punish me and do all these mental tortures and just horrific. But also, I admired how in control she always was. She was always in control. She always followed everything to the letter. There was, the only chaos that occurred was from her. And, you know, in regards to her punishments.
Right.
Outside of that, everything ran like a military operation. And as sick as that sound, I did admire that. I really did, because there were a lot of kids. There was a lot to take care of. Mm-hmm. And everything was perfect.
Like clockwork.
Like clockwork. And I dedicate the book to the kids in the home, in part to say, if you haven't told anyone what happened, maybe this is a way. Right. Because I'm in touch with a few of them, and a lot of them are still in hiding, because the world is so judgmental and so cold and so cruel, and they just want to move on. And I'm talking about men and women, who have kids, careers, successful careers. I had this one man, I was at a charity event, he's in a suit, comes up to me. I've worked with him several times at certain events with my charity. And he gets me alone and he says, St. Joe's. I said, well, oh. He goes, yeah, I was there, I remember you. And only if you were a kid there would you call it St. Joe's. And I grabbed his hand. He goes, don't. He goes, we made it. And we hugged and we started crying, and I was like, oh my God, my mascara. And yeah. And I knew, and he knew, that I wasn't going to out him. Because I understood. And that's why I dedicated to them, and also as an apology to them that I wasn't hiding for so long.
That's great. And you talk about stigma and shame and so on, and really, I mean, how do you combat that, I guess? You think about, when you talk about...
medication.
Oh, well, besides medication and bourbon and all the other...
And legalized. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
You get no argument from me. Please cut that out so my mother doesn't see that. Speaking of mothers, the last person you dedicate this book to is to your mother. Mm-hmm. And the way the dedication kind of reads, it doesn't come off anything like an afterthought at all. It almost comes off like, and surprise, my mother. You know, mm-hmm. I'm dedicating this to her. And it's very interesting when you talked about stigma and shame, and your mother had some challenges. And for those of us who have family members or ourselves have these kinds of challenges, there's always a stigma to it. You know, they hide you away, or you're ashamed, or you deal with it in a way that may not necessarily be the best way to deal with it. Mm-hmm. And I found her to be such an interesting character, an interesting influence in a way on your life, and how you talk about how there were days when everything was just fine, and then other days where you just didn't know. And there was a person there. You know, a lot of times people don't give that acknowledgement that there is a person there, regardless of what the situation is, physically or mentally or otherwise. And there's a person there, and they are like anyone else. They just have to have this particular kinds of difficulties. And I found that you wrote about that with such affection and grace and such honesty. So you talk about her briefly, and kind of just, you mentioned her on the cover too, but I think that's kind of with love, you know, my crazy mother, you know. Could you talk about her?
That's hard. That's really, really hard. I'm moved by what you said, because I'm glad that
Thank you.
It came across that way. Because even though she was a horrible mother, she was a person. And I wanted to be as respectful as possible. And she was a person with mental illness. Not all people with mental illness are as cruel as she was, but she had a lot of sadness in her because of her mental illness. If my mother wasn't mentally ill, she would probably be at the Academy Awards right now, or at the Grammys. And I don't doubt that in any kind of way. She sang like so beautiful that, could you not film me? It just is too distracting. You could take pictures, but then I get self-conscious. Thank you so much, I appreciate it. The pictures are fine because I did my hair, but thank you, I appreciate it. To be cursed with that affliction, I saw later in life that it broke her heart, not on a daily basis, but minute by minute. And that's when I started to open up. And that's when the forgiveness started to seep in. It didn't occur right away, or I wasn't the bigger person about it, not at all. But that's when I was like, wow, you know, and I understand now why she went to the tabloids. It was pain and resentment and self-hatred and jealousy, because she should have been privy to that. But she couldn't. She couldn't. And people would always say, well, your mother should stay on her medication. It's her fault. I go, she's crazy. She can't stay on the medication because she's crazy. She tries. It lasts for maybe 4 days, and then it's like too much for her. Because when she has complete clarity, all the pain from the past comes wafting over her, and then she has to drink it away, or smoke it away, or pop pills, or whatever, and then the wild, crazy woman comes back, you know. And you know, God bless the women that come out of the closet about mental illness, you know, because they, you know, it's really deep. And then it's hard for me to talk about her. It was hard for me to write about her. It was easier for me to curse out my editor when we were writing about stuff than to admit that it was painful.
Right.
You know, and what I do get from her that I cannot stand, and I was talking to my half-sister about it last week. We went for coffee. I said, oh my God, me and you just did something that Mom did. And she goes, because she's in us. I go, no, I can't accept that. She goes, well, you're going to have to. She's in us. I was like, oh, wow, shit. You know, and you got to come to peace with that.
Yeah, and in the book, I felt that. I felt as I read this sense of forgiveness come over in the later passages of the book. It was almost like an arc of how you traveled. I got the sense of that as I read it. So it seemed to occur almost in real time as I read it. So your mom was a performer. She was a singer before, and you are a performer. And you talk about from the earliest days, you were a performer. You're two, and no matter how pissed off you may have been, if they convinced you, you would get out there and you would do your thing. You would dance, you would sing, you would just be a performer, and that's followed through everything that you've done. What do you think was that? I mean, I was a performer because I like the attention. I'm the oldest of 5 kids, and the oldest, they throw you away when the new ones come along. So I wanted to be the center of attention simply because I was in the corner, on the sidelines, while everybody else was the center of attention. What do you think was the meaning behind your wanting to perform? It's even at such an early age. It's just innate, or?
I think it's I am a ham. I do if it's appropriate, I like the attention. Like you said, if I was in a comfortable surroundings, I would perform. You didn't have to ask. But if I was with strangers, you really would have to push me to do it. But even when I do movies and I go and do publicity and what have you, it used to be really hard for me. I didn't like that attention. But when I went on the stage, when I did Broadway, I was like, I love the applause. Oh my God, I could do this for the rest of my life. You know, and just love it. And I think it's because my mother is in me, but also my father is in me. My father was the biggest ham on the entire universe and was very unapologetic about it. And he didn't do it for an audience. He did it because he just enjoyed it. It was just him. He would sit next to somebody on the bus and goes, hello, how you doing? Do you know, one time I was with this woman, you know, and you just like, it's just wow, you know, it's just like, oh my God. And, you know, it's just who I am. So it's in me, but sometimes the attention is difficult. And I learned in therapy, it is one, because there is a shy part of me, believe it or not, but also it was the home, because when we would step out of the home as kids from the home and you would walk down a public street, everybody would say, that's the kid from the home. Those are the kids from the home. Look at, those are the kids from the home. And you would, every single time, it's like, really? You said that yesterday. Can we move on? You know, and it was constant. It was constant. And so some attention I don't like. That's like, I don't know if it was TMZ or whatever. There was a guy hiding in the car and they were talking like, is she here? I think that's her SUV. Oh, and I'm with the guy who drives me, and he's Dominican, and I started with them from way back, and I just carried them with me. And he was like, Chacho, my God, right? And he says, what do you want to do? I said, I'm going to put a scarf around my head, even though it's going to mess up my hair. I said, and we're going to walk in, and they're going to think that we're just 2 Puerto Ricans. He goes, I'm Dominican. I go, okay, I'm Puerto Rican and Dominican, you know?
Walk into a bookstore, it's the beginning of a joke, yes.
Yeah. You know, but, you know, I see some celebrities that fake as if they're like, oh God, it's TMZ, you know, but they love it. but it really brings me right back to that place. And I've learned to deal with it. Well, in the beginning of my career, I couldn't stand it. And even then, as a child and into teenage years, if people would stare at me, what are you looking at me for? It just would throw me.
Well, speaking of performing, there's one thing I wanted to ask you, and then maybe you could settle a 35-year bet. But before I ask you that question, I did read the entire book. The bookmark is in this section here, but I wanted to put the bookmark in this section for one reason. Because you talked about when you were on Soul Train, which is where most of us probably first saw you on Soul Train. And
I'm getting applause for humping down a Soul Train line. All right. Look at that.
Who didn't want to hump down the Soul Train line? Seriously. But what I did not know, and what your book tells us here, is that what you got paid. And I love this because I was sitting on the train going to Brooklyn yesterday to the Oscar party, and I was laughing so hard people actually moved. They thought that I was crazy. And you got, well, please tell them what you got for payment at Soul Train.
A 2-piece Kentucky Fried Chicken lunchbox.
Not even a bucket of chicken, just 2 pieces.
Yes.
And I won't tell you how she creatively used the chicken that she got from Soul Train, but I will say that what made me laugh was I just started thinking of Colonel Sanders coming down the line, you know, popping and locking.
Yeah.
And I just thought that was, damn, Don Cornelius, that was cheap, dude. You know, not even good chicken, not even Popeyes, you got KFC.
And we used to fight over the boxes that had all white meat, too.
Knowing Don, there was probably only 2. Everything else is a drumstick.
Yeah.
No, but and also you talk about, and I happen to remember this clip of Keith Sweat. You know, whiny ass Keith Sweat. Sorry. You're dancing. I love Keith Sweat, but no, that's how he gets the women. He whines. If I whined like him, I'd probably be in trouble. Anyway, you were dancing with him, and apparently that made Don
he was dancing with me. He was dancing. I was just doing my thing on the back riser, and he came over to me. And if someone sent me the clip, I was falling out laughing because it was such bravado. Because inside I'm going, oh my God, he's coming over to me. Oh my God, he's coming over to me. Oh my God. And then I see the camera go. You know, it's ridiculous. Just so stupid.
So you can settle this 35-year bet that I have with my cousin Janine about the Soul Train scramble board. I told her it was fixed, and that everybody knew it was going to be on the scramble board before they got up to unscramble it. So
it's fixed.
Janine, give me my money.
Yes, it was fixed.
Well, on that note, just so we can allow some time for the audience to get a couple questions in, we're going to allow you guys to ask Rosie some stuff. Does anybody? Okay. I'm going to bring you a microphone.
Okay.
Excuse me. Can I have a tissue?
Yeah.
Firstly, Rosie, congratulations on the book.
Thank you.
We met, I believe it was 2005, at a Roberto Clemente event.
Oh, wow.
And I actually tweeted you that.
Thank you.
And I said, and it's interesting what you were referring to with regards to, yes, I am shy. And immediately when you came in that night in Manhattan, everybody obviously, you know, Rosie's here, Rosie's here, Rosie's here. And I was handling a auction table. We were doing like a little silent auction before Roberto's sons arrived. And you came over to me and you're looking and you started asking me questions about Roberto. But I just, once again, you go based on what you see on TV or what you read in the papers. And I remember I said to my buddy that, I said, oh, she's very reserved, you know, sitting there, sitting in the corner, everything. To the point when you actually had to speak, which now it was, okay, that's Rosie on the stage. But you didn't necessarily make any waves when you entered this particular establishment. But that's the first thing I want to say. Secondly, if we could kind of switch it up a little bit, you're a big boxing fan.
Yeah.
And the last time that these United States have had a world champion, I believe, was the gentleman in your borough, Mr. Briggs, 2005, 2006. Yes. So we've had a couple that have come from Brooklyn.
Judah.
Yeah, that's true too. That's true. What's your take from the standpoint if we will ever see an American-born heavyweight champ?
Oh, a heavyweight.
Yeah, heavyweight. I'm talking about heavyweight.
Oh.
It's been a while.
Well, I don't know. It might be a long while because as I've become friends with a lot of boxing aficionados and experts, what they explained to me is that the heavyweight division has moved to football because they thought it would be less damaging. Isn't that ironic? And so that's why the heavyweight division went down. But there are a few new prospects, but a lot of them are going into MMA, mixed martial arts, because the brutality is disgusting on that level as well. But the Queensberry rule is when they decided to put padded gloves on the boxer's hands. And they thought that the reason for it was to protect the boxer's hands they would break during a fight. What they didn't realize was that allowed the boxer to hit you more. And so that's where the head trauma would come along, and you see Muhammad Ali and Freddie Roach and everything. But in MMA, you only have knuckles, padding on your knuckles. So when you get hit, it's going to hurt and knock you out, but it's not going to, that's it. You know what I mean? That's why the rounds is only 5 3-minute rounds, because that's all it's needed. You know, so a lot of the heavyweights are just, they've moved on, because when a heavyweight hits you, I mean, you really get hit. There's a whole different power behind that as well. So that's probably another reason why.
Favorite boxer growing up?
Willie Benitez. Roberto Duran.
Do you have any other questions out this evening? Right here.
Hey Rosie, I'm from the same part of Brooklyn you are, Bushwick, born and raised.
Holla.
Yeah, holla. And obviously gentrification is a big topic that's going down, and as a young professional coming from Brooklyn, born and raised, and moving back to the neighborhood, it's kind of a contentious topic with people who are locals and with people who have moved in regards to not exactly who belongs there, but how it affects the people that are now growing up there. What is your take on gentrification specifically in Bushwick? Do you feel like it's improved the neighborhood? Do you think it's given us a chance to possibly, you know, create better like school systems and whatnot, or do you think it's a detriment?
That's such a long topic to go into, so I don't think it's like fair.
We can go to dinner, you want?
No KFC.
But I will say this. I love Bushwick, and it's a blessing and a curse, the gentrification, and everybody should have an equal slice of the new pie that's set on the table, and that's not occurring. And there's not a lot of respect that's going on either. And the prejudice is prevalent, even though they're not even aware they're being prejudiced. When they see someone that looks like you or looks like me, and they probably assume that we live in the projects or one of the tenement buildings or on welfare or uneducated or whatever. And what's crazy is that welfare recipients have gone up, and majority of them are white people. So, you know, I've seen a couple of hipsters with the welfare coupon card, trying to pass it off like a credit card. They go, phew.
Don't leave home without it.
You know, gentrification is not solely for white people. It's a certain mindset that enters a neighborhood, and it's not just, you know, a lack of color. It's a lack of respect and dignity. That's what's going on.
Next question, out this way.
Hi, Rosie. I'm short. I'm going to stand up. My name is Denise. I have to admit, I haven't read the book, but not to sound cheesy, but something bigger than me brought me here today. I don't know what. I work at FIT, at the Fashion Institute of Technology, and they just celebrated for Black History Month the 25th anniversary of Do the Right Thing. And Spike Lee came and spoke, and that was all good and dandy, but I was like, I don't see any of that. I don't see him, I see her, you know. And just as a young Puerto Rican, well, I'm not that young anymore, but as a young professional Puerto Rican girl growing up in Brooklyn, you know, there's not many of us that are accomplished professionals. I just got my master's degree from NYU, and as a thank
Congratulations.
you.
No, seriously.
But I'm not here to share my accomplishments. I just want to say, as a Puerto Rican girl growing up, thank you. On behalf of young Boricua girls everywhere, women like you, Lauren Velez, like, they're just so prominent in my mind.
She's Dominican, but go ahead.
Sorry, she is half. She's half.
Oh, she was too.
But just to see Latinas out there doing their thing, I just want to thank you for putting that out there.
We have time for just one more before we start the signing portion of the evening.
How about
How you doing?
Two more.
Hi, Rosie.
Hi.
In 1994, you attended the Academy Awards. Can you talk about
93.
93?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Can you talk about like the whole? I read the book about like meeting like Raquel Welch and all that. I thought it was pretty funny.
Well, it was my sister who met Raquel Welch, and I don't even want to say it because it's just too good. It's just good. But let's just say Bushwick was brought to the Oscars. So I was like, wow, you know, and so was like Aguadilla. My gosh, you know, it was, but I would have not had it any other way, because I swear to goodness, I think we were having the most fun. I was with Whoopi on the View, and Barbara was trying to make a tender moment. She obviously had not read the book, and she was like, "Yes, and Whoopi, you were there at the Oscars. Is that right? And did you speak to Rosie?" And I go, "Yes, she came down and said that I was gonna win." And my father turned to me and said, "You're gonna lose." And you know, at first I was like, "What the hell are you gonna say that to me for?" And we looked at each other and we just started laughing, you know, because I won already. I was there. I had my dad. I had my sister. I felt like I had all of Brooklyn cheering for me. And, you know, success to me wasn't, when I was a kid, money was not important. It was stability and love and connection. That's what I always wanted. And when I talk in the book that I love suburbia, it's true. I love it. I mean, it's so underestimated. You know, people go, people are from the suburbs. I'm like, I want to go to your house. Oh my God, you don't have to go anywhere. It's right there. You have everything right there. It's so awesome, and it's quiet, you know, and all that. For me, what that meant was stability and peace. And sitting there in the Oscars, I had it. So I won already, you know. So I loved it. So.
And I won't spoil it, but I agree with your sister's response, which was really, really, it was not just Brooklyn, it was like Jersey for me. You know, I can imagine my sister, my mother getting up and doing the same thing, so.
So one more.
Thank you. So thank you, Rosie, for clarifying that gentrification doesn't come with the lack of color. Because I've always been that white girl that's made it there before the gentrification happened. And prior to being on my own, I was always that white girl that wanted to be Puerto Rican. That's what people thought, because I was around Puerto Ricans and black people, and there wasn't many where I grew up, but there were some, and I came from an old mill town, so a lot of people from New York migrated there because it was affordable to live, and we weren't supposed to mingle and mesh back in the early 80s, but I was a B girl and there was nothing stopping me from breakdancing instead of listening to Rick Springfield. So
I love Rick Springfield.
Got to know with Drake.
I love him.
But I'm very curious, without having read the book or diving deeper than what I've seen from you outside of your personal life, what your spiritual path has been like, and what has been your spiritual refuge that you've taken. Has it switched along the way? Has one link spiritually connected to another that has seen you through your daily challenges? Or
My spirituality, I'm a recovering Catholic, and
Hi, Rosie.
my name is Rosie, and I'm a recovering Catholic. I would say this, what I've learned from growing up with that specific dogma, and then going into becoming a Pentecostal, and then trying to go to Baptist church. I was scared. I didn't understand why everybody was screaming. And, and then going to non-denomination, and then going to like just circle groups. You know what I learned? It really is not that deep. For me, it's not that deep. It's very simplistic. It's just, for me, it's acknowledging I'm just a tiny, tiny, tiny particle in the big, big, big picture. And if I do have any type of spirituality, it's having a decent moral code. Because I really believe that if everyone treated everyone else with respect and just basic decency, the world would be a better place. And I think that's when we would become our true spiritual selves. But I think it's that simplistic. I don't think it's... I couldn't stand yoga because to me it was just like the Catholic Church. I'm being honest. When they started going I'm the only one going See, because when you're Catholic and you're kneeling and you're praying and everything, you only act like you were really praying if a nun was looking at you because you didn't want to get hit, and when you did have prayer, when you were praying by yourself, there was no ritual to it. It was just an honest, pure, simple conversation. And to me, that's where everything has led me. It's not that deep, and that's where the deepness comes from.
Wonderful. Well, on behalf of the Strand, thank you so much, Rosie and Odie, for joining us tonight.
Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Yeah.
Thank you.
If you haven't already checked out the book,